Welcome back to this Low-K Habitas channel. This is the seventh time we have seen each other. We have reviewed the interesting topics of the current situation and technological advances, especially everything that has to do with artificial intelligence. But there are other very important ones that play an important role when it comes to seeing how a system or a market works. And it is the creation of financing systems that overcome the barriers that normally exist to access the services of this sector. Join me again as we take a look at research that attempted to provide insight into this issue. There are different types of research. Some that analyze quantitative data, data that occurs over time. There is other research that makes simulations and models about how certain systems work. And there are other very interesting investigations that, for example, delve into or are based on historical facts. On this occasion, I am going to talk to you a little about this last type of research, since I had the opportunity about 6 years ago to get involved in doctoral level research that dealt with the creation of financial systems to promote the construction sector. And there are many stories that deal with these topics, and any country will have a particular story. I chose one that happened in Colombia between the 60s and 70s of the 20th century, where a group of people took on the role of what we call institutional entrepreneurs. They are people who achieve, through coordination with other actors, with people from the government, with people from private companies, with the community, with society in general, and can break the rules of the game, what we call institutions. In this case, there is a person who, along with others, was able to achieve this in Colombia through the creation of the UPAC system, the Constant Purchasing Power Unit, which emerged in the year 1972 and until the year 1999. Produced a radical change in the way construction was financed, and particularly the construction of residential projects. Just as it happened in Colombia and several countries, for example in Chile, in Brazil, in Argentina, particular systems emerged. What was the objective of those systems? Well, on the promoter's side, basically a system was needed that could channel private savings towards construction projects in the context of a very important phenomenon that was the growth of urbanization. Millions of people at that time began to move considerably from what we call the rural areas to the main cities, and that made construction increasingly attractive during that time. Phenomenon that persists today, and that at that time gave it a kind of fuel for change to emerge. There are many writings on this aspect. The one that I particularly developed, I am going to share as an access in the annotations of this video, so that whoever is interested can read about its details. Suffice it to say that the construction sector has changed considerably in recent years, and the story I am telling you is an example of this. So, cataloging the construction sector as one of slow change may be quite reasonable, but there are interesting changes, and not only in terms of productivity and new products, but also in the financial area. In this investigation, for example, in the lock and carry case, it was achieved from two very particular attempts. The story is beautiful because in a first attempt it could not be achieved, with a development plan in the 60s that took the name Colombia Operation. But later it was complemented, developed, and presented as another development plan in the government of that time, known as the Four Strategies Plan. There is no part, let's say, perfectly accepted as positive or negative the system. There is a whole strand of critical discussion about this, particularly on the question of why focus on a particular sector and not on several sectors. And that gave rise to several criticisms even from the system, from the beginning. Carey's story is very important. Roger Sandilands already wrote a biography about him, which I invite you to review. This research was about how some people take on the role of what we call institutional entrepreneurs. Like all entrepreneurs, they are those people who break barriers, create products, create services, but they especially do so by changing the rules of the game regarding, for example, in this case, a financing system. In the 60s and 70s in Colombia, for example, there was no financial system, a mortgage system that allowed people to save and invest the banks in construction projects considerably. So, For example, the economist Locke and Carey, already in Colombia, created the basis to develop a system that was called the UPAC system, per unit of constant purchasing power, and thus in several countries in Latin America, for example in the case of Chile, a similar system was created, which allowed people's savings to be indexed at attractive rates for the time, and then these capitals could be invested in the development of particularly real estate and residential projects. This story, for example, can be found very well written in a document that I can share in the links with the annotations of this video, so that you can see it in great detail. In this era where there is a boom in technological change, for example artificial intelligence, in parallel issues are discussed with it that have made lately access to housing. One of those variables, for example, is the interest rate, and on the other hand, the increase in prices of services and products related to the construction sector. In this way, it would be interesting how all these variables are mixed to promote or slow down the growth of a sector as important for any region of a country's economy as construction. In the case of Colombia, as I already mentioned, the UPAC system was created in the year 1972, and it was able to persist, it was able to survive in some way until the year 1999, where for various reasons that have also been discussed in books as important as The Actors in the End of the Century Crisis by Miguel Urrutia. It is a book that I invite you to review. It tells from one angle how the development and end of that system was, and how another was created from there. Friends, you will see in these stories how the construction sector is cyclical, and from time to time there are difficult times like the one we are experiencing today. It's good to read a little history about it. I have found that it has been scarce, but there is also the opportunity to embark on a journey about this history and learn from it to recognize all the good that has been done in the past, how the difficulties have been overcome, and what problems still persist. I invite you then to read this research a little. Until next time.